The views and opinions expressed in this program do not necessarily represent those of Natural Bridges Media or KSQD's staff, volunteers, or underwriters.
Greetings, my friend. We are all interested in the future, for that is where you and I are going to spend the rest of our lives, whether we want to or not. And remember, my friend, these future events will affect you. The future is in your hands.
Welcome to What a Week, KSQD's Listener's Digest of all the news from this last week that you really need to know. I'm Tony Russomanno.
And I'm Erik Nelson, and have we got a show for you?
Now, you can't be well informed unless you are informed well, and that's where What a Week comes in.
For the next hour, we're going to dive deep into what's been going on over the last 7 days, giving you a quick rundown of what's happening here in Santa Cruz and in the rest of the world.
And because sometimes you just want to get away from it all, we'll play you some music designed to soothe your soul and bring a smile to your face.
So turn up that radio, fire up that internet browser, and get ready for another edition of KSQD's What a Week. Well, never has the mighty Criswell. God help us in the future. I'm Erik Nelson.
Yeah, and I'm Tony Russomanno, wishing everyone a very happy Shark Week.
This is the predictive hour of What a Week, and joining us from St. Louis, Sarah Kendzior. Are you there? We have you on our radius here.
I am here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. We can hear you loud and clear. Well, Sarah, the last time you joined us, it was March 1st. So doesn't that seem like a glacial age? The Earth has cooled considerably since you were last on the show.
Yeah, honestly, I thought it was last year, but yeah, a lot has happened.
Yeah, and we talked about you joining us about a month ago for this day. You were able to find time in your rather busy schedule to join us. And who knew that, the Epstein thing would be bursting forth the very week.
They knew. Yeah. They knew.
They knew. Well, dear listeners, let me, Tony, we did something rather bold here to introduce you, Sarah. We went to your website and we just pulled what you wrote about yourself. And the only thing I want to point out, some of it's a little outdated, but just amend the record here. Tony?
Okay. Well, first of all, author, scholar, especially of post-Soviet states like Uzbekistan, best-selling author of The View from Flyover Country, Hiding in Plain Sight, and the aforementioned They Knew, which, by the way, kept me up until 4 o'clock this morning, Sarah.
Gee, You've got some splaining to do here.
The latest book, though, is The Last American Road Trip, which came out in April. So, also... Oh, man.
I love this part. Let's go with this.
Yeah.
I am well known, this I being you, I am well known for my coverage of the Trump administration and its aftermath, and for writing about authoritarianism, kleptocracy, transnational organized crime, racism, xenophobia, media, voting rights technology, environment, and corruption, among other topics.
Well, yeah.
So I think we pretty much got your band.
She's worked. Sarah, you've worked for a number of organizations, media. You worked for the Daily News. You see similarities with what Trump is doing, what you saw in Uzbekistan, and you also emphasize that you live in the center of the country, not in D.C. or New York, or for that matter, not in Santa Cruz. So you've got a good perspective of the flyover states. But boy, I'm telling you, your words really resonated with me, especially this morning at 4 o'clock. I was thinking that Stephen King scares people by writing about his dreams, and you scare people by writing about being awake. Simple declarative sentences that have a lot of power. So welcome.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I scared myself writing that book, so I understand and apologize.
Well, right off the bat, as they knew, you had a chapter 3 is explicitly about Epstein. That book came out, 20
It came out in 2022. I wrote it in 2021. And I have this theory about my books that it takes 4 years for them to go from being thought of as, lunacy and wild conspiratorial thinking to being accepted as conventional wisdom. And this happened with my first book, The View from Flyover Country, written around 2013, which was about the rot of American institutions. That was an accepted view by 2017. Hiding in Plain Sight, which is about Trump's rise and his ties to transnational organized crime, was written in 2020. The basic views of that were accepted by 2024. They Knew was written in 2021, but published in 2022. And so now it's 4 years later. All of the stuff in there about Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, all of these other participants in trafficking and blackmail, was thought of as a fairly wild book when it was published, and again is now being thought of as accurate and true, but it's too late in many respects to do anything about the things I told people back in 2022, which is why I called the book They Knew, so that everyone would remember that they did know and they chose to do nothing about this.
And you called it in 2015, a year before the election. You said Trump was going to win. I mean,
yes.
Flat out called it. And as cynical as I am, I thought it was going to be awfully close, but I never called that. Well, big question one, and we're going to circle back on this later. You've been right. You're prescient. You see what's happening, yet you can't stop it from happening. And I think part of the new book, the Last American Road Trip, is you kind of working out, wrestling with your demons about how to exist in a country that has lurched in these horrific dimensions, yet raise 2 kids and cope with it. And we'll come back with that because we like to leave people a little optimistic on this show. But we can start, But I'm just curious, just right off the top. I mean, how do you cope with that? I mean, the fact that you called it, yet you're not on Meet the Press tomorrow, right? They're not saying. You're not writing, you haven't taken over Maureen Modo's column in the New York Times, even though you've called it consistently and accurately.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of thing I don't care about at all. I don't want to meet the press. I don't want to be involved with the New York Times. I want intellectual and creative freedom, and I want these problems of corruption and abuse to be solved. And at this moment, there is no way to do that while being part of an institutional apparatus that's going to, censor and contain your views. And so I've tried as much as I can to be a free agent. I have a Substack newsletter. That's my main source of financial support, and then books. But even the books, there have been multiple cases where they've tried to censor them. There's a lot of pain in knowing that these things are coming, and it's not like I did some sort of amazing work here in predicting them, because often the perpetrator, says in advance that they are going to commit these crimes. That's what Trump and his whole cohort have been doing. That's what his mafia accomplices did. That's what Project 2025 did. That's what a lot of the tech lords did. Like, it doesn't take a lot to figure out what's going on. It's just a matter of, are you taking it seriously, and do you care about who is going to get hurt? Because I think in many of these cases, people who are getting hurt are among the people who are already marginalized, vulnerable, impoverished. And so there's this tendency of those big media institutions to look the other way because they don't care. They don't care because they think it's not going to affect anybody in their social circle. I think that delusion has been punctured recently with the Trump administration attacking places like Columbia University or Paramount or, government institutions and so forth. They suddenly realized that they are not, in fact, immune, and they're beginning to freak out. But
in the case of Columbia, in the case of CBS and Paramount, it's over. Columbia lost. We'll be getting into, we predicted when Skydance came into the picture last year with Paramount, this show was saying, this isn't David Ellison, this is Larry Ellison. This is a right-wing billionaire, and his failed son is buying by proxy CBS News. There's going to be an impact on this. And in the immortal words of, I'll hand this over to our one of our far-flung correspondents.
Surprise, surprise, surprise.
That's right. PFC Gomer Pyle called it. This is just what's happened. Well, going on.
Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Gomer Pyle now.
Yeah, exactly. Hegseth's new chief of staff, from what or excuse me, Kegseth, as we like to refer to him. Well, let's go right. I mean, people are wondering. You know, you've been watching the Epstein thing very, very closely. What's your take? What are people missing now? Like, what's the story that you're seeing that maybe the media is not seeing? If you've chosen to wallow in this last week, I think it's kind of inescapable what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, first off, I hate covering Jeffrey Epstein. I've been covering him for a decade. It's been enormously frustrating because it's a very tragic and awful subject. And I think the first priority should be recognizing the victims of this trafficking operation, including those who've committed suicide, like Virginia Giuffre did recently. You know, they were very brave in coming forward. But information about Epstein has been in the public domain for over 2 decades. And that is enormously frustrating to me, because what the perpetrators have done is basically delete the public domain. I could have never written the chapters about Epstein that I did in my books, Hiding in Plain Sight, and they knew now. The information from them, probably half, a third of the large collection of endnotes at the end is gone. It's been deleted from the internet. It's been deleted from newspaper archives. It's just simply the court documents, government documents, they're erased. And, these Silicon Valley tech goons and government agents are going to great pains to erase history and to erase context, so that when people see Jeffrey Epstein, it's very difficult for them to piece the whole story together. And, my book does that to some extent, although there are plenty of things that I don't even get into that I think need to be examined more, like his connection with scientific organizations, especially those investigating AI or eugenicist, initiatives. There's plenty more. I'm not the sole source, and folks should keep looking. But it's getting harder and harder for those who are pursuing the truth to find it. Ironically, this is the issue, I think, that brings Americans together. I said this when I wrote They Knew, that this is the one. Like, no one likes child rape, child trafficking. No one is in favor of child abuse except for those doing it. And so this is not a partisan issue. The people who committed these crimes span, both sides of the aisle, and the people who detest Jeffrey Epstein and Maxwell and the rest also span both sides of the aisle. Like, I think there are plenty of people who voted for Trump that are genuinely disgusted by this, and they want answers. I don't think that's fake, because I kept hearing over the years since I published Hiding in Plain Sight, I get these emails saying, I voted for Trump. I really liked him. I trusted him. I read your book. I didn't know about the Epstein stuff, and now I've changed my mind. So whenever I hear that people can't change their minds, I don't believe it. And that's not why I wrote the book. I was just, giving the facts. But, the vast majority of the country wants answers about this and is repulsed by this. And, we're not getting them, and we're definitely not going to get them under Trump and his administration, which of course is going to go to great pains to cover them up, because Trump was sued for raping a preteen that was procured by Epstein. And Mar-a-Lago was cited as a place where they recruited girls. And so, there are a lot of just very overt connections that you could have found in a mainstream publication just a few years ago, but now those articles have been wiped off the internet.
Well, you talk in, I forget which prophetic book, about false saviors. And when I say false saviors, it's the people who are supposed to get Trump. Come on down Mueller, come on down Jack Smith, come on down Georgia courts, come on down convicted of felony. A key question here is, do you think this is the thing that's going to get him? And if not, how is he going to weasel out of it, as he's demonstrated an amazing ability to do constantly?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I want to say that whole thing, Mueller's coming, Garland's coming, Smith is coming, that was a propaganda operation. That was one that I studied for years on end, that was deliberately meant to make people passive, to make them just sit back and wait for some savior who actually was there to protect Trump, to protect his cohort, to protect Democrats involved in the same activities, to protect corrupt institutions, basically, by being a corrupt institutionalist, by reciting those mantras over and over and threatening and harassing anybody who dared to dig into these issues. So that said, what's coming next? We've seen Trump flirt with the idea of immunity for Ghislaine Maxwell. This was brought up before when she was initially arrested, and that arrest kind of surprised me at the time. He, of course, then, referred to her as a good person or something of that nature. I think what their ideal is to have her just name, Democrats or various enemies that they have in order to have a pretext to get away with that, hope that MAGA and all those supporters buy it, and then, set her free as some sort of martyred hero. And then the operation will continue. I mean, this is one of the questions I have, because I don't think with Epstein's alleged suicide that this massive trafficking, blackmail, and espionage operation suddenly just vanished. This is something
it existed. It existed before this scandal. I'm old enough to remember Craig Spence and the scandal that engulfed him.
Yeah, and before that, there was Roy Cohn, and, there's certainly been many efforts of the FBI or of other foreign intelligence agencies, the KGB, the Mossad. They've all used these disgusting, child rape blackmail operations in order to control powerful members of government or, of the royal family or celebrities or what have you. So it didn't suddenly come to a stop in the summer of 2019, and I don't know who has been managing it since, but obviously it has a large amount of control. And it's notable that Ghislaine Maxwell's father was Robert Maxwell, who is a multifaceted intelligence agent, also connected to the Russian mafia. But his main connection was to Israel. He was given this very grand funeral by the Israeli state government, who thanked him for his contributions to Israel. And this is somebody who is trafficking arms, who was trafficking drugs and trafficking children. And this is what they honored and valued. And, and so his daughter then, teams up with Epstein and continues this operation for the next 2 decades, because Robert Maxwell died when he, quote, fell off a yacht in 1991. The circumstances of that are debatable as to, whether he fell or whether he was murdered.
Half the people in your books have died by some mysterious circumstances.
But Sarah, look, I got to stop you here, because this was just in from the tarmac in Glasgow. I think someone has a bone to pick with what you're saying.
We make it.
Did you ask House Republican leaders to not vote on the resolution about releasing the files?
I was never involved in that. I'm focused on making deals. I'm not focused on conspiracy theories that you are. I mean, I watch you people. It's so sad. You ought to talk about the success of our country instead of this nonsense you talk about over and over again.
Yeah, Sarah, so take that on, huh?
It's not a conspiracy theory, it's a conspiracy.
Yeah.
I'm honestly surprised he doesn't have better rhetoric on this, because, Trump is a good demagogue. He's a horrible person, so just please don't take that out of context. But you know what I mean. He's very
absolutely.
Good at
he's really good at this.
Propaganda. He's very slick, and he sort of seems to be slipping up here. It might be that he just doesn't care, that he feels he has amassed the amount of power that he has, so it doesn't matter whether he is slick about trying to tamper down, the rage that a lot of people are feeling about this. There's also the theory, and I've wondered about this from the very start. I didn't think that Trump actually wanted to be president again. That doesn't mean he didn't want to win the election. I think he wanted to win the election because he never wants to lose anything.
And he had to win the election because he knew it was in store for him if he didn't win the election.
Exactly. Well, what he needed to get was what he got in the summer of 2024, which is immunity from the Supreme Court for all crimes. And then after that, I don't think he has any interest in governing. He's just interested in ruling. I think he wouldn't mind leaving the White House and just leaving this behind. And I think there are a lot of people, in particular Peter Thiel, and other people involved in tech and surveillance and AI and so forth, that would like to put forth their own frontman, probably in the form of J.D. Vance, to take over this country and not deal with Trump, who is a very mercurial individual, very loud. I think he's kind of a pain in the ass compared to others. So it's possible that Trump might want some way out of actual responsibility, and somebody else is going to step in, and this is their way of doing it. But even then, I'm still surprised, because when Epstein, quote unquote, died, there was this flurry of coverage about him. All these stories that had been killed by the media up until that point were suddenly released all at once. So it was like you had no information before, and then you're drowning in information. And this time reminds me a lot of that. But there's not a precipitating event that, in that case, it was that he allegedly killed himself in prison. This time, it's sort of coming out of the blue, just out of frustration that he had made this promise to release the Epstein files, and he did not. Biden also did not. And people are really angry. But it all seems to be happening kind of in a uniform way, and people who haven't talked about this subject since 2019 are suddenly speaking up and are all, agitated. I don't really trust it when it's coming from politicians or from big media groups that have remained silent over the last 6 years, because, this isn't new, and there is never justice for the victims, and the perpetrators are still out there, and they've never faced any kind of recriminations for rape and trafficking and other activities. So, that's my concern. I'm not quite sure why they're pushing a topic that is absolute dynamite for them, that could blow up a lot of things that they seem to value. They like blowing up other things that we value, like healthcare and so forth, but they usually don't like to blow up things that they themselves value, like the ability to rape children with impunity.
Well, yeah. One thing we do on What a Week is we try to take musical breaks, and I spelunked into your assorted works, Sarah, and found this one. We share a love of this artist. There's Robert Johnson. The great bluesman Robert Johnson is considered like the great bluesman. I don't even think he's the greatest Johnson. I think there are other bluesmen who I think are greater. And there's Tommy Johnson and my favorite blues guy, Lonnie Johnson.
Yay!
So,
Lonnie Johnson.
So I think, isn't Lonnie a St. Louis boy?
Yes, he is. He wrote about the tornado that hit back in his day, back in the 1920s. And I was re-listening to that during the one that hit us in May. So, yeah, he is St. Louis.
I'm fairly sure
St. Louis running through these songs.
I'm fairly sure this is the only pivot from a deep dive into the Epstein case into classic 1938 blues. But anyway, let's...
is this Devil's Got the Blues? Is that what you're playing?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Good morning, blues. Why have you been so long? Good morning, blues. Why have you been so long? I just stopped by to leave you enough of worries to last you while I'm gone. My brains is cloudy, my soul is upside down. My brains is cloudy, my soul is upside down. When I get that low down feeling, I know the blues must be somewhere close around. The blues is like the devil, it comes on you like a spell. The blues is like the devil, comes on you just like a spell. Blues will leave your heart full of trouble and your poor mind full of hell. Some Some people say there's no blues, but that story is old and stale. Some people say there's no blues, but that story is old and stale. The blues will drive you to drink and murder and spend the rest of your life in jail. The blues and the devil is your closest friend. Blues and the devil is your two closest friends. The blues will leave you with murder in your mind. That's when the devil out of hell steps in.
A cheery bit of prophecy there from the great Lonnie Johnson. So a couple milestones here for everybody. Today is Stanley Kubrick's birthday, and I think we'd all agree that even Kubrick's bottomless well of cynicism and insight into the depraved human condition might have been grappling with the stuff that's going on at the current moment. And last week marked the passage of, two notable cultural icons, Hulk Hogan and Ozzy Osbourne. And I want to point out, it's interesting how this works. If you looked at the response to Ozzy, it was just love. Everybody loved Ozzy. You know, you read articles, journalists who hung out with him said he would brew up tea and was wanting to play stuff for people. He just had a good heart and a good soul. And then there's Hulk Hogan, who, basically went out in a cloud of infamy, showing up at the Madison Square Garden Bund rally, last year. And I point out, Sarah, you brought up Peter Thiel. Do you remember the lawsuit that was instigated?
Oh, absolutely, the Gawker lawsuit.
Yeah, go ahead. You can let people fill people in on that.
I'm trying to remember the details. But basically, Hulk Hogan was used by Peter Thiel as a vehicle to sue Gawker for an incredible amount of money and sue them out of existence. And the timing of this was notable because a writer named Nick Bryan, who's also written about trafficking networks and Craig Spence and Epstein and all this stuff, had given Gawker the Epstein black book, like the book of phone numbers and contacts that they have, and they had published it. What Thiel was suing about was not that; it was another issue. But in the process of that lawsuit,
Gawker had outed him as being gay. That's what he was upset about.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out.
Right.
I don't want to get sued by Peter Thiel, so I was trying to figure out how to say that delicately.
Just stay away from airplanes; you'll be fine.
And to be fair, Gawker had done a lot of terrible things to a lot of people over its run, but it also had revealed the truth about a number of things. And I think that it was that truth that they wanted suppressed. I think that Trump and many other people identified Gawker as the type of outlet that was going to go to places that other outlets would not go. If he were to run for president, it would be the kind of place where a lot of really damaging stories would show up. And, they needed Gawker to be gone. I don't idolize Gawker or anything, but I think they would have had a real impact on Trump's first term, on a lot of things that have happened over the last decade, that it's been out of commission. As I've watched website after website fall, I think that every time. Like, what if this place had stuck around? What if its archives hadn't been wiped? What if Google still worked as a search engine? How would we process information and how would we respond to crises? It would be different.
Well, Brendan Carr, this is just in from Brendan Carr on the Skydance and the future of CBS. So this is, this will put a nice chill up our collective spines.
Broadcasters. We heard a little bit about what they're going to do different on 60 Minutes. Is there anything beyond that you could tell us about what they're going to do differently, fact-based? That's kind of a cultural shock to them. It's going to be.
Yeah, it might be news to some folks over there. One of the things they're going to have to do is put an ombudsman in place for 2 years. So basically a bias monitor that will report directly to the president. So that's something that's significant that we're going to see happening.
So Do you catch that? So they're going to put an ombudsman at CBS News reporting directly to the president. Now, I believe the president is not Trump. That is one thing I want to damp down right now. The president is the president of the new Skydance operation. But people have leapt to the conclusions, well, they really mean the real president. But the point is, they've taken over, the gargoyles have taken over the cathedral, in the words of Ray Bradbury with CBS News. And your point about, again, I'm kind of jumping around, Sarah. There's just so much to talk about and so little time, and also music I want to fit in here, right? Come on, you've made some. We can't got to top, Lonnie Johnson with that. What's the optimistic news about media? You mentioned that you really don't care that you're doing What a Week today and not Meet the Press tomorrow, because you don't need Meet the Press and you don't need Modo's column, because you're reaching the people you reach independently and they're not telling you what to say. Do you see that offsetting what's happening, the gutting of something like 60 Minutes, or what's happening to our news organizations, this kind of, what did Timothy Snyder say, obedience in advance?
Yeah, I mean, it offsets it to a degree. I'm more worried about the ability of people to take action against all of these horrific developments that we've had, not just in the last 6 months, but, in particular, like when they build a concentration camp in the Everglades, what are we supposed to do about that? I am worried about the direction that the mass media is going, but I also think the influence of the mass media is so much less than it was 10 years ago. It's become very fragmented. Everything is streaming networks. My TV no longer has TV in it. It buffers. That's not a thing a TV is supposed to do. So I think a lot of the cohesiveness of the American media monoculture is gone anyway. And so one thing that is frustrating, though, is that was happening, but we used to have, Twitter, and we had Google as a working search engine, and we had all these alternate avenues of sharing information at a very wide scale. And because of algorithms, because of paywalls, because of AI, all of that is being erased. And of course, I worry about what is going on at Substack. I worry about what's going on at the other newsletter, website platforms. I don't think there's really a safe place online any more than there's a safe place in terms of a safe country or city. Like there's no refuge anywhere. And I think that feeling is so pervasive. I think people wake up and they feel that every day. They feel like nothing is safe. You're always surveilled. There's nowhere to hide, and there's nowhere to really express yourself and be confident that your words will not be erased or they will not be twisted. I worry about electronic media. I worry about what will happen to the versions of my books that are on Kindle, whether parts of them will be removed or even rewritten in the future. It's very dark. I know you asked for optimistic stuff, because the optimistic stuff is that there are still a lot of great writers, great investigative reporters, people doing very hard work. It's just a matter of figuring out the distribution methods when all of these tech corporations are constantly changing the mediums and changing the rules. But folks just gotta, they gotta keep going. I think the sense that, the entire apparatus has crumbled will maybe lead to greater, a sense of personal freedom, a sort of sense of screw it all anyway. Like stop climbing that career ladder to nowhere and just do a good job and speak your mind and, open your heart. I hope it prompts people to do that because, we're kind of at a nothing left to lose point here,
Sarah Kendzior, best-selling author of her latest book, The Last American Road Trip. Or should I call you Dr. Kendzior? Kendzior, it should be, with PhD in anthropology, right? I would say a PhD in social anthropology, maybe political anthropology.
It was political anthropology, but it was a while ago. I forget I have it. I mean, it did come in very handy. I did not know that all my years studying Uzbekistan would be then applied to the host of Celebrity Apprentice, but it did, work out in a kind of way.
We pulled an excerpt from one of your books that Tony voiced to save you. I could say, hey, read your own book. Go to page 234 of the second edition and read this bit.
Let me get that.
Yeah,
okay,
but Tony has this quote that sort of is in a line about dictatorships and what we're in the middle of experiencing.
Dictatorship is a branding operation. The ubiquity of the dictator's name and image, the repetition of slogans and symbols, the hollow rituals like elections with preordained winners, firings with preordained losers, all contribute to the building of the spectacular state and its captive audience. This pageantry is something authoritarians and reality TV producers understand in equal measure, and Trump inhabits the worlds of both. His brand of celebrity lent itself to the presidential race and his eventual win, and the dismissal of him as a serious candidate by national security officials was deeply naive. It would be bad enough had Trump merely emerged as a bigoted demagogue, but add long-standing ties to a transnational crime syndicate affiliated with the Kremlin, and one ends up with a human roadmap to an American kleptocracy.
Come on, Sarah, turn that frown upside down. Put on that happy face.
Tell us what you really think.
We want lemonade, not lemons. But, you're right. What do you say? You did in fact call it. I want to go a little deeper now, back to the Epstein thing. I mean, do you really think I think it's highly likely he'll pardon Maxwell? Do you think that's going to work? Do you think that'll bail him out, or do you think, as you said earlier, the revulsion and inherent loathing of sexual predators, and so many people have been a victim themselves in some way, shape, or form? Is this the thing that can finally turn the cult around, or do you think they're just going to come up with yet more excuses, or will it dwindle the cult?
I mean, I think the cult was never as large as people claimed it was in the media. They'd like to do this 50-50 thing, and it's really a relatively small part of the population already, and they were getting increasingly disillusioned with Trump already. And so, yes, I think this may be the final straw for a lot of people. The problem is, I don't think Trump cares very much about his cult, and he never has. He has never cared about public opinion. He cares about power. And at this point in America, power and public opinion are completely separate. We have lost the leverage of elections. We have lost, to some degree, the leverage of protest, of documentation, of all of these traditional ways of battling an autocracy. And the groundwork for that was laid over the last decade. It took a while. And of course, we lost the courts too. And that's one of the most essential things. And so in his view, if you look at all the people he pardoned in 2020 at the end of his term, they went on to play vital roles in rebuilding him in the future. So with Maxwell, I don't think he cares. I just wonder, my guess is that the desire for Maxwell to be pardoned is coming from somewhere else. And if I were to guess, it would be Israel, because Israel honored her father in such a lavish and over-the-top way. And, Epstein is suspected of working for a large number of governments, or at least being connected to them, and Israel is one of them. So I would think, especially given, all of the criticisms of the genocide and mass starvation of Palestinians, that they would like to get their own leverage. And, having the Epstein tapes or documents or whatever it is that this trove contains would be very advantageous to anybody. But my guess is that, because I don't think, this is going to, yes, this will hurt Trump. This will actually hurt him in terms of public opinion, and he will not be able to build that back. They're not going to be able to sell this woman as like a martyr or a victim. They're trying really hard, but her own victims have said she's not just a trafficker. She was also a rapist herself, a sexual assaulter. And the way she talked about these girls is awful. I mean, she just said they were trash. They weren't human. There's a dehumanization to what Epstein and Maxwell did that's just so sickening. And if anything, I hope that if he does this, it spurs more inquiry into the Maxwell family, into her brothers and sisters who also have high places in tech and in governments, a lot of connection to powerful people. This is never the story of one person. This is the story of networks, of mutually interlocking criminal networks that span the globe, that often have a lot of nepotism involved, and that have been building for basically my entire life. I think kind of taking off in the Iran-Contra era in a new way, and then followed that was the collapse of the Soviet Union, which changed a lot of motives and a lot of alliances. But a lot of times it's the same people. They're now well into their 70s and 80s, and among those people is Donald Trump.
Well, let's move now to the new book, and you took a cue from one of the great works of the 20th century, one of the great artistic accomplishments of the 20th century.
What are we going to do?
Road trip.
Road trip. So the book, your latest book, which really does contain a lot of the DNA of our conversations, The Last American Road Trip, kind of is your chronicle of how you, I won't say got away from it at all, but how you went deeper into America and grappled with the country we all live in and kind of imparted to your children a way of coping. So pretty broad subject for a book, but tell us about the book and tell us, did it work, and what are you doing to kind of preserve your sanity?
Yeah, this is a tough time for sanity. I'm basically living out that Lonnie Johnson song. So The Last American Road Trip is the story of trips I took with my husband and my two children across America in, every direction over the last 8 years, basically from 2016 to 2024. So we were watching the political landscape change, the environmental landscape change. I didn't set out to write a book when I did this. I just wanted to go on vacation. And in particular, I wanted to see things like national parks and historic sites before either Trump or climate change damaged or destroyed them. And I really wanted my children to see this with their own eyes. When we first went on a road trip, they were 5 and 9. Now they're 14 and 18. And so, they've grown up in a very tumultuous era. And I wanted them to see places that were beautiful and awe-inspiring, and not just sort of, the grimness that they would hear about kind of from my career. I mean, the thing is with kids is that they're charmed by all kinds of things. Like, you go to the zoo, you go to the park, they're happy. So it's not like it was this big struggle to make them happy. But I wanted to go on vacation too. So anyway, that's what the book is about. And it is about struggling with these conflicting emotions where, I love this country very deeply, but I'm not going to lie about its past sins, and I'm not going to lie about its present problems. And, the love is very deep. The love is kind of like how you feel for family, and it has all the complications of that. And so conveying the truth about this country to my kids, while also hopefully, kind of hoping that they will love it and appreciate it while they have it. It was a very emotional experience. And I think the best way for them is just see things in their own eyes, not through my lectures or my words or my books, but just through their own experiences. And I think we had a lot of great experiences. This is a good book for parents. When I've written before about taking my kids on trips, I got a big response, especially from people in my age group, people in their 30s and 40s struggling with the same kind of issues. And so I thought, what the hell? I cannot write another book like Hiding in Plain Sight or They Knew. I cannot write another Trump, Epstein, dark descent into hell. I have to write something, more fun. And so, that was the goal. I went, with this direction in this book.
Here's a song that I've culled from the pages that kind of captures the fun, and gives us again a welcome musical break. You'll recognize this in a nanosecond, I'm sure, Sarah. Maybe not this version, but maybe you will.
By a fountain back in Rome, I fell in love with you. In a small cafe in Athens, you said you loved me too.
And it was April in Paris when I first held you close to me.
Rome, Georgia,
Athens, Texas, and Paris, Tennessee. No, we're not the jet set where the old Chevrolet set. There's no Riviera in Festus, Missouri, and you won't find old Nassas in Mullinville, Kansas. No, we're not the jet set where the old Chevrolet set, but ain't we got love? No, we're not the jet set where the old Chevrolet set. Our steak and martinis is draft beer with weenies. Our Bach and Tchaikovsky is haggard and husky. No, we're not the jet set with the old Chevrolet set, but ain't we got love? No, we're not the jet set with the old Chevrolet set, the Prine and Dement set, ain't the Flamin' Suzette set. Our Bach and Tchaikovsky is haggard and husky. No, we're not the jet set with the old Chevrolet set, but ain't we got love?
Is there such a place as Festus, Missouri? I have to ask.
Yes, there is. And every time I drive through it, I start singing that. That's, in the opening of the book, I have two quotes, and one of them, is that song, the Tammy Wynette, George Jones version. But yeah, I went actually back in 2016 to a Trump Tea Party rally at a Harley Davidson parking lot in Festus, Missouri. I was covering the campaign, and they gave a prayer. They gave a prayer also to Pepe the Frog. What was it? Gateway Pundit was there. It was all very weird. I go out to Festus a lot. I like geology. I like to go, digging. There's some old mines in that area. So sometimes like a farmer who used to have, a mine on his land will let me go around looking for quartz. I have a lot of weird hobbies, but yeah, if you're asking how I get through this time, it's that kind of thing.
Well, it sounds like you're
but there's an abandoned mine, so it really works out great.
But you're kind of living in a New York Times diner piece. The ones where David Brooks would go. He'd go to to a Denny's somewhere
in Deep Red, Ohio.
Or Tom Friedman would get in a cab with somebody and then say, "Well, I have my pulse." But is it helpful that you're living in the center of America, that you're interacting with ordinary Americans, or is it? Do you feel like a stranger in a strange land? It must be.
No, this is my home. I mean, I feel like Katniss from the Hunger Games when I go to like New York or DC. Like I'm very much a District 12 kind of gal, and I'm waiting for, the day when one of these New York Times people finds me in a diner and, starts interviewing me, and I screw with them and get that into the paper record. But yeah, I mean, the thing is like this is a diverse place in terms of ideology, in terms of demography, in terms of anything. We're not different. Like the same way California's got plenty of Republicans and MAGA people and, all sorts of folks. And it's not just this sort of liberal bastion. Missouri is also not like that either. We've got everybody. And so, I like living here. It's cheap. I mean, I don't like the weather right now. It's, generally very interesting as a historic region, as somebody who likes history, as somebody who loves, kayaking and canoeing and geology and caves and all my weird little hobbies. It's a good place for me. And it's also where I've raised my children. They're born and bred Missourians. And so, it's home. When you give birth to somebody and, raise them somewhere, that feels more like your home to you than, anywhere else you live, because you see it through your children's eyes and you worry about it, much more than a place that you're just passing through.
Yeah, from St. Louis, it's Sarah Kendzior, the author of her new book, The Last American Road Trip, here on K-Squid in Santa Cruz, KSQD. And Sarah, you should know, and you're great number of fans should know also that this program will be on our website, ksqd.org, in a couple of hours after we get finished here, so people can go back and listen to the entire show many times.
People are going to want to hear Lonnie Johnson's.
Absolutely,
they will. He's going to have a revival now. He's going to he's going to make it big again.
We do a thing, a section of the show. We call it Profiles in Discourage, which is basically a way of kind of chronicling the excesses of what this current administration is doing. Ben Collins is the guy who, Kat Abu, he's Mr. Kat Abu, and I'm watching her candidacy very closely. She's, to me, someone I want to see win and get into Congress. But he wrote, "It's become clear that this administration is just a protracted war on anybody who's read a book without pictures in it. It's a miracle we're all still getting up and going to work every morning. The psychological drain is the point, and I'm increasingly grateful to the people who are still decent," which I think we all can agree. Just in Santa Cruz, we usually start with local news. We had our beloved Planned Parenthood office that just closed, suddenly shut down. It's one of the first times that in the People's Republic of Santa Cruz, the evil tendrils of this administration have really reached out and grabbed us.
This is part of the largest Planned Parenthood group in the United States. The Santa Cruz branch was one of the original members of that group, the Marmonte group, and it's one of 5 Planned Parenthood agencies in the Marmonte organization of Planned Parenthood that have closed with no notice. They put up signs on the front door and the back door advising people to call a phone number for telehealth.
And yeah, we're not going to play the Korn song though. That's the one thing in your book that I actually checked it out, and I'm like, nope, I'm not going to play that song.
I think it requires too much explanation as to why, but yeah.
I think our already minuscule listenership would plummet if we
not today. It's not minuscule today.
But we will play though. This was a request from a short little song from you that you sort of threw in, I think ironically, but then I kind of fell in love with it. We have a little time left for one more song. This is What a Week, and this is another request direct from you, and it goes out to listeners. The title says it all. I ain't looking for the answers anymore.
Well, all you sweet and tender things who used to visit me and bring me apricots and roses as we talked until the dawn, stretched out there across my bed, you needed something more instead. I must have sure messed up your head the way I rambled on. But you'll be glad to know those days are gone, and I ain't looking for the answers anymore. I won't trouble you with questions like I used to do before. It'll all be songs and dances, I'll just roll and take my chances. I ain't looking for no answers anymore. There was a time when I would try to figure out the reasons why we speak of love and reach for love but never nail it down. Why nothing ever seems to last, and why the time goes by so fast. But all the questions that I'd ask would only bring you down. But now it's safe for you to come around, 'cause I ain't looking for the answers anymore. I won't trouble you with questions like I used to do before. It'll all be songs and dances, I'll just roll and take my chances. I ain't looking for no answers anymore. I ain't looking for no answers anymore. I won't trouble you with questions like I used to do before. It'll all be songs and dances, I'll just roll and take.
So, Sarah, you're astonishingly prescient. You've written a series of amazing books. You've got a great Substack. You're really on top of everything. But you can't top Tom Paul Glasser, can you? Admit it.
No. I'm influenced by him, but I can't top that. I wish I was alive during that era. I would have just gone to shows and solved crimes.
Yeah. Ooh, I like that. And but I have to say, the concept of you at a diner in your gingham dress and David Brooks walks in and starts asking you what you think. I would love to see. I'd love to see his egg-shaped head explode.
What I have to do, I got to go to Pennsylvania because they don't go any more west than that. That's their big, thing. It's like Bucks County.
I was about to say they go as far as Bucks County. Great minds think alike.
And then they turn around. They'll never make it to Missouri. So I'm going to have to take a road trip. I'm going to take a road trip and find those New York Times guys and, put on a little show, a little Kendzior show.
Time has never traveled faster. This is we're closing out the end. First off, when we spoke a little earlier today, I sort of half seriously broached the idea of you coming and let's just do a music show where we play music and relax. So you have an open invitation, Sarah Kendzior, just to do.
I would totally do that.
Okay, well, I'm going to call you on that because it's just send me your list of requests and we'll somehow spackle it into prescient commentary on the world. Well, how's this? Any closing thoughts? And again, we'd like to lead on an upbeat note because there's so much depressing mulch here in the world, and you're trying to kind of carve your way through a world and administration that's hell bent on demoralizing us. Yet we persevere.
Yeah, I mean, that's the uplifting note. I mean, it's hard to be that way. I think the weather also contributes to it, like this sort of unrelenting heat. So I'm just hanging on to the idea that, the temperature will drop and fall will come and there's certain kind of beauty that you can rely on. In the last American road trip, I wrote a lot about the search for beauty that can't be altered. I often find that in astronomy and in geology and things like that, simple pleasures. So I don't know, just know that you're not alone in this. Everybody, I think, is struggling with what's happening, no matter who they are. And we're dealing with a lot of really traumatizing issues, looking at something like Epstein, looking at something like the Gaza genocide. It's a traumatizing thing to read about on a daily basis, of being very upset about it. That's a normal thing. It shows you're still human. You have a heart, you have a conscience, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, well, we do what we can do. We recorded an excerpt from, I think it's the end. I think it's from the new book, Sarah, and we're gonna end up with that. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us. I mean, I feel like we could go on for 3 or 4 hours, and either people would be running, screaming from the weird music we're playing, or opening up their wrists from the political commentary. I'm sure it's all in all a deep dive into our world.
They won't be asking questions anymore. Just
Sarah,
like the song says.
After reading all of the unfortunate accidents that have befallen the people who populate your books, do you ever fly in an airplane?
Unfortunately, for my book tour, I had to. But generally speaking, I like to drive. I mean, I like to drive anyway. I just like to see, all the places in between. It's fun for me. So
the litany of airline crashes in regard to people in your book is not coincidental.
Well, and as far as the links between Putin, I'd probably stay away from those hotel balconies.
Oh, and open windows. You don't want to go near.
Yeah, no, I'm well aware. And in Hiding in Plain Sight, when I wrote about the journalist Wayne Barrett, I had to specify that he died of cancer of natural causes because, like nearly everyone else in the book, got murdered. And then some of them got murdered after the book came out. So there's that. So yeah, fun
all
times.
Sorts of things can happen.
So much for ending on an up note.
Yeah, I was about to say, no, we're going to try. I think
the up note's like a 17-story window that would fall out.
Well, no, you got to stick around to do our 2-hour music special. So that's
for sure.
That's a date. So this is What a Week with Erik Nelson
and Tony Russomanno
on KSQD, and this is I think this may be the closing, if not the closing, sort of near the end, and it's a good way to go out. Sarah Kendzior, thank you so much for joining us. This has just been a wonderful, thought-provoking ride.
Oh, thanks for having me.
I don't expect to see peace in my time. I expect a continued erosion of freedom coupled with horrific shifts in our environmental climate and our national law. I expect surveillance culture will exacerbate fear to the point that submission is no longer recognizable as such. It will just be called life. I expect elite criminal impunity to prosper so long as officials refuse to enforce accountability. I expect recessions and censorship and violence. But there is a difference between expecting an American autocracy and accepting it, and I refuse to accept it. Every loss we endure is a reminder of the gifts we still hold and of our obligation to fight for a better future for the next generation. I will never settle. I want to settle the score.
Wouldn't it be nice